Welcome to my tutorial for Dogurai. And I'm playing it on the Switch. I believe it's available on some other platforms as well. And I did beat the game about 2 weeks ago, so, some of the aspects of it are a little hazy, but once I watch this video back, I think it'll come back to me. This game is kind of inspired by the old Game Boy style, visually, and in some ways gameplay-wise, because a lot of the controls are really, really simple. So it can be a little clunky as well, but once you get used to it, it's a pretty enjoyable game. I'm definitely going to do a review on it as well, so stay tuned for that. So you pretty much have your regular, sword slash, and you have a double jump, and you can slide, and I think that's pretty much it for the controls. There's really not much to the controls, but the game can be pretty challenging. And for this game, I'll have to check to see how long this one took me to beat. Let me see. Usually I check before I start up the commentary, but I'll check real fast just to see what it was. I don't remember it taking too long to beat. But I try to give that information out on all my playthroughs just so players who follow the channel can get an idea of what they might be able to expect. So yeah, it took me around 2 hours and 20 minutes to beat. And the game is pretty short. If you do everything right, it's maybe about an hour. A little bit over an hour, but you can expect it to take several hours depending on your skill level. The game also, whenever you fight bosses, there's certain shielded enemies. You go into this quick time event, which can be pretty fucking irritating initially because it expects you to input the inputs for the button prompts that come up extremely quickly. But you do get used to it after a while, but you have a split second to react to it. So you will have to get used to that. And while it was tricky for me to get it at first, it did come to me eventually. So for these guys, you'll see it goes into this QuickTime event type of thing with the button prompts. And you can see this is one of my early times doing this where I just really wasn't used to it. And it did catch me off guard initially. Even though I realized that they, after a while, the first time or so, I realized they wanted me to input the button prompts on the screen, but I just wasn't quick enough until I got used to it. I was also using a joystick for most of the game, which, the directions on a joystick may be a little bit slower to hit than on a standard D-pad, but either way, it can be tricky. You see how little time you have to get it right. So this was like part of the learning process initially, but later in the game you'll see me banging these out pretty quick on the first try, but it did take me a little while to get used to until a little later in the game. Basically, whatever button prompts show up, left, right, up, down, or whatever, you have to hit them as they show up. So it's kind of like God of War, QuickTime events that have been around for a long time now. You didn't really have them in games of the period that this is inspired by, so there's that little modern touch added. But this mostly plays more like an older game. So I show the first death of each new checkpoint just to show progress. I didn't want to do a clean edit where I don't show the deaths because then you won't know where you start when you die, and it would make it confusing to see my health bar suddenly refill at random points. So I do show the first death. As long as new progress was made, I will show that death to show the new progress. But then all the other deaths will be edited out. And of course, for the beginning of a stage, I don't show any deaths on the first checkpoint of the stage because it would just be redundant. And you can see the progress by just seeing my successful run of that section. So you don't really need to see deaths there. I just try to show deaths when it indicates new progress, basically. But yeah, it's a pretty simple game, to watch and understand what's going on, but I thought it would be good with some commentary. I might be able to point out some nuances and things like that as I watch it. There's definitely some tricky parts, but there's nothing extreme. But some parts can take some tries to get down. So this first boss is quite simple. Just try to avoid his attacks and chop at him, obviously. And if you can execute the QuickTime event that it goes into, if you can fully execute it, you'll do a lot of damage to him, and you can much easier take him out. You see, I fucked it up because I wasn't used to QuickTime events in this game. The speed of them at this point. But you see that first death there. But if you are able to execute that properly, you do a lot of damage for each command you get correct. So it does help with getting that extra damage in. But you don't have to do well at that, as long as you keep hitting him and dodging his attacks. You see, I'm playing it really sloppy, and it was good enough to beat this guy. So a lot of my boss fights were real sloppy because I was just scraping by, and it was enough to beat the section. It didn't require any great skill or anything to beat most of the sections in this game. Just learning it enough most of the time was good enough. So this is definitely not a refined tutorial, but it will definitely show the game being completed. Luckily, this game does have saves. So I don't know if it saves your checkpoints if you shut the switch off, but it will save. If you complete a stage, it'll be permanently completed. And I think you can revisit stages too on the overworld map, but it will save that at least. So you don't have to leave the system on to beat this. There's still some indie games on the Switch that still don't get that right, and they make you start over if you shut the Switch off, despite having unlimited continues. And this game also has unlimited continues. But yeah, just a lot of running and double jumping. The platforms do disappear, so be careful of that. I think it took me a moment to realize I could slide. So you got to use the slide to get under that. So again, it's going to go into a little QuickTime event here. So these are pretty much required. You have to pull these QuickTime events off to beat the shield guys. So that's mostly where I learned how to do those QuickTime events, because I got used to them from those guys, since those guys are reused a lot throughout the game. So if you go up here, you can get some health. I don't think there's any permanent health upgrades or anything you have to worry about, but if you need health replenishment, you can pick up those items. In this game, whatever checkpoint you get to, even if you die or whatever, I don't think there's lives in this game, but if you die and continue, you'll go right back to whatever checkpoint you last got to. Though, like I said, I don't remember if it saves if you shut the system off, but it will if you complete the stages. It will save that. So now you have to kind of try to move as quick as possible with this lava, which is a little tricky. You may want to slide a lot to get under those overpasses and just keep moving. Try to do everything fluidly. Even if you take damage, just prepare to take the hit and just keep moving. So plan ahead for that. You don't have to worry about not taking damage. You just want to mainly keep moving fast. I probably fucked it up here, but you do want to do it quick. Yeah, see, if you're not fast enough, when you go down that little section, you'll definitely get killed. So you got to do it quick. So I think here I got it down. You just want to keep a constant movement. And like with all these games, it gets easier once you know what's coming up. So then you're able to do everything a lot quicker. So it is a trial and error type of game, like old arcade games and old, NES games and such. See, now I'm able to make it down there much faster just by not worrying about stopping for the enemies. Just keep going. Don't get the health power up or anything. You really only want to get to the next checkpoint in a game like this, because if you die, you'll just start at that checkpoint. So you really don't need to be grabbing health and wasting time on that. The game is pretty good with checkpoints. You see I die here, and I think this is the next checkpoint. You see it's right here. So the game is pretty good with checkpoints, but there's some that are a little bit far apart, and they're not. It doesn't take that long to get through the checkpoint, but some of them are pretty dense. So you may try some sections a while before you get the timing down and the positioning. But a lot of times you can take good damage. A lot of times it's better to just take the hits and just keep moving, because they do give you health power-ups every once in a while, and you got your checkpoints. So I usually try to move through aggressively in these kind of games. So these little rock formations that are pointing downward, they don't actually prevent you from moving or anything. It's kind of like just background effects, so you don't have to worry about those. And now you have the boss. This is one of the trickier bosses, even though it does have pretty simple patterns. It can be kind of tricky. I believe I remember what I did for this guy, but let's see the successful run. I think there's a simple way to deal with him, if I'm thinking of the same boss. So he is very tricky to hit when he's moving. He'll move into you many times because you have a very floaty jump. So the safest way to deal with this guy, if you're patient, once you dodge all this shit, wait for him to form some flames around him and he's going to come down. And then all you got to do is jump over him, come back around to the other side, jump over him again, and now dodge the fire. And now you can go into the quick time event, which is where you're going to do the most damage. So you see, completing this successfully takes off like half of his health nearly. So if you're not comfortable with hitting him while he's flying around in the air, just learn how to dodge all this shit and wait for that quick time event, which always triggers when he does this move. So after he fires all these, he's going to come down and run. I believe he does. Maybe he doesn't do it right after that, but once he has the flames around him, he's going to eventually come down to the ground. So jump over him, run to the right, then jump over him again, and just always repeat that same pattern. Now just jump that fireball and approach him. And now you go into the quick time event. So if you're good at these quick time events, you can make a lot of parts easier. Also, not to mention that they are required for some of the fights. Like for the shielded guys, you pretty much have to do them. Now I'm going to show some boss fights where I kill the boss so fast he's not able to go into the quick time event, and I did that for a reason because one of them I think is super fast to react to, and I just found it easier to kill his ass before he was able to engage me with that. But yeah, like I said, if you're having trouble with this guy, don't even try to hit him until he does this, and just rely on the quick time events. Now, if you have trouble with the quick time events, then you're going to have to rely on getting more damage on him, as he's moving around, obviously. So depending on what you're more comfortable with. But I found it easier just going to those little quick time events and mostly damage him that way. Because whenever I would try to hit him when he's floating around, my jump is so floaty, he usually just hits into me. And I feel like the hitboxes around your character are pretty large. Maybe they're like rectangular or something because I always feel like I'm getting hit when I shouldn't. But it could be me. But I am used to a lot of platformers. So like I said, the game is not the sharpest hit detection and best playing. But it's pretty good. So here, use your double jump. Kind of dip down a little bit and then pop back up to get across. You don't want to, hit your head on the ceiling where the spikes are, obviously. That'll fuck up your momentum and damage you. You can also destroy bullets with your sword, so that's helpful. It's best to destroy those bomb guys before going up just to make it safer. Watch out for this little steam here. Once it dissipates, you're free to go through. It is annoying if you get hit by it because it freezes you into an ice cube, which you're going to see is fucking annoying later in the game on some later platforming parts. It can be very irritating. But if you do get frozen into an ice cube, just start, mashing the buttons or jiggling the stick around and you'll break out. It's one or the other. But it can fuck up your momentum if you're trying to jump from platforms, as you'll see later. That's one of the harder jumping sections later in the game. But this part is easy. You may take a few hits, but it's pretty fucking simple. I was just being impatient and playing sloppy. One thing I don't like doing in a lot of games is waiting around, so a lot of times I'll just be aggressive on my first time trying to get through a section. Or maybe for several attempts, I like to just try to bust through shit. That's just my play style. Usually the last thing I'll do is stop in a game and try to carefully play and wait for shit to move. my natural reaction is usually to just try to bust through. I try to do it with precision, obviously, but when you're learning the game, you know, it's going to take some trial and error to get that flawless kind of fluidity down, you know, where you can go through with a rhythm and not take damage. But I never mastered the game to that degree. You know, this was just me busting through, so it's nothing too crazy that you're going to see here in this video. Though my upcoming tutorial of Vengeful Guardian Moonrider, an awesome game that reminds me a lot of Shinobi 3 for the Genesis. I'm currently working on the Glass Cannon mode, which is one-hit death. So I'm actually trying to do the levels in a really quick and fluid way. Like I played Metal Storm Expert for NES, where I got this perfect rhythm down. I'm trying to do that with the game. So not only am I completing the one-hit death mode, which is, you know, pretty challenging, but I'm doing it in a fast, fluid way. So it is going to take me a little longer because of that, but it also kind of fits the natural style that I'm used to playing as. But it does take longer. It's more high risk because you can't make any mistakes, really. But I think once I get that up, that's going to be a nice, clean run. And the tutorial for that should be very cool, I think. It's not going to be the easiest to follow because it's going to be from a lot of practice and it's going to be fast-moving. But there's going to be some nice boss tactics on there where you can wipe out bosses quick. So I think it'll be a cool video. That's going to be more of a bigger, more fleshed-out tutorial than some game like this. So here I didn't really know where I had to go on the first time getting there, but now you'll see how to do it properly. So you don't want to go to the right. You want to go up here. You don't really want to do that either, but shit does happen. It is irritating. This is one of the irritating sections where you're going to get frozen a lot. There's really nothing over here, so you didn't have to do all that. I was still experimenting, trying to figure shit out. So now the key with this part is to just try to go fast and time it so you can just keep moving. You don't want to stand still too much because there's not a lot of safe spots to sit around and see what's going on. You see that was sloppy. Now maybe you'll see the proper run of the stage. Sometimes I do miss deaths in editing, so there was a little extra bonus footage for you. This is my first time seeing my playthrough as well. I don't watch a lot of these easier game playthroughs that I do until I do the tutorial, if I do one. So it looks like I missed a few deaths there, but you can see how bad things can go. So, I mean, for a game like this, it doesn't hurt to show a few extra deaths. You know, you can see the various ways in which you die, and then you'll get an idea of how I ended up pulling it off. Which I think once I did it, I just decided to move really fast. What makes it hard to move fast in this area is, you got the fans and you got the things that freeze you, and you got the ice, so it makes movement slippery. So I wasn't as comfortable with the controls here, with the slippery controls. But I just tried to bust through and really be precise with my movements. If I do get frozen midair, I try to break out of it midair and then curve back to the other side to get back on a safe platform. You can use these little alcoves here as well to get a little breather and plan your next move. This part is not bad. The challenging part was getting here. And then once you get here, it's really not too bad if you play careful. You may fall back, so be used to, be ready to save yourself if you do miss the jumps or freeze. But once you get on here, it should be easy. See, once I got that health, I thought I was going to hit solid ground, but I didn't jump up quite high enough. You got to pretty much double jump straight up to get up there, I think. So once you're up here, that's the checkpoint, and you're at the boss of the stage. So now if you fail, you'll start right there. So this is very easy. Now with this guy, I think all I did was really fucking sloppy. I just went after him really aggressive and just chopped the shit out of him. I think that's what ended up working. I may have tried to dodge him a little bit initially, but you'll see when I do kill him, it's very aggressive. I don't even really worry about taking damage. All I worry about is following his movement on screen and just trying to chop the shit out of him. So just follow him and just try to follow him movement for movement and just chop at him. If you do it right, you're going to out-damage him and do a lot more damage than he could do to you. When he goes up on the wall, obviously, you should try to dodge that thing that he throws. But aside from that, try to follow him. Try to avoid the ground pounds he does and shit. I mean, it is good to try to dodge some of this shit. Now, if you can get these quick time events, you do extra damage as well, but I fucked that up. And as you can see, this is an easy boss. He has a lot of things that are easy to counter. You know, where he's vulnerable for a moment after he does some of his moves. So it's pretty fucking easy. Because even if he doesn't show like he's vulnerable, he does stand there for a little while. So there's a lot of opportunities to just get multiple slashes in on each opening. See, and even though it was sloppy, it was very easy to break through. So the reason I'm playing this part a little slow is I think I got through this checkpoint on my first try. Very easy checkpoint. And not much to say with this one. You can take a lot of damage. There's not really any pitfalls to worry about, any major ones or anything. So it's easy to kind of just bust through. I think you even get some health replenishments on this little run here. But you can see I'm just kind of hauling ass playing sloppy. It's like a rough draft. You know, I just run through and see what happens since there's unlimited continues. And, you know, just playing sloppy and just running through basically. And it was very easy to get through this checkpoint. I believe you have to go around. It's a very simple kind of little maze-like thing where you don't know exactly where to go, but there's really not many options. So you shouldn't get lost. You can obviously play this safer if you want and not do that, you know. But you do get a checkpoint right here. So, you know, this is very close by. So, see, it's pretty forgiving. It's difficult not to make it to that checkpoint the first time you play this section. The best way to do these guns, obviously, is to wait for them to fire and then get, you know, maybe 2 hits in and then just go back down. But if you want to be sloppy, you can just try to fucking rush into it or whatever. But if you want to play it safe, just do a few hits, maybe 2 or 3. So you can, maybe you can't, you do have to kill this guy, I guess. So yeah, you have to do this little quick time event. Whenever you see these guys, you know, you want to get up close to them and it will initiate a quick time event. So eventually you're going to get pretty good at these because you're going to have to do them a lot. I did feel like one of the bosses you had to pull it off really fucking fast. I don't know if that was just me. But one of them was really, it seemed a lot harder than the other quick time events. So I bypassed it by just killing the boss super fucking fast before he could even initiate it. And I'm going to show that later. So if you're having trouble, you could try my method on that boss. So now you go into your first little kind of one-off segment where you're riding a motorcycle. And of course, with the motorcycle, it's one-hit deaths, I believe. I don't think there's any health with that. So once you get on the motorcycle, you know, you do have to be pretty much flawless with your movements. But it's just a little memorization sequence, really. Once you know where to move to, it's very easy. So you're going to go into that little, you know, sequence. You just have to know when and where to jump, basically. So that's all going to be self-explanatory from just watching the video. A lot of times you want to double tap your jump where, you know, you jump, you land, and you pretty much jump immediately again for some of those parts. So just keep that in mind. There's going to be some parts where you're pretty much jumping one after another. And I believe I took the top path there as well. I think the bottom path may kill you. You just hit into a wall on some of the routes. So, you know, you do want to follow that. But it's pretty straightforward. I think you need to complete this bike sequence to get to the next checkpoint. I think you have to fully complete it. It does go on for a little while, but it's very easy once you understand when to jump. I don't think there's any permanent health upgrades, but I wasn't sure at this point, even though I had full health, I thought. Maybe some of them would give me a larger health bar, but I don't think that's how it works. So yeah, if you want to be patient, you can just, you know, hit the turret a few times, and just go back down, as usual. Over here, I think there's some worthless conversation. I don't know if there's better endings you can get by talking to people or anything like that. I usually just go for, normal endings, just regular completions. There may be a harder mode that has limited lives or something like that too, or one-hit deaths. I'm not sure. I didn't like the game enough to do anything beyond this. I thought the game was decent, but it's a little clunky. I believe you have to drop down in that gap. The thing is, you can't really see below you, so sometimes you're just taking a leap of faith in games like this. So I believe the boss is coming up shortly. You can actually get that health up there. It's a little bit of a tricky jump where you got to curve around. But you'll see me get it eventually. It's probably the trickiest jump in the game, but it is completely optional. So you don't have to fuck around like this if you don't want. But it does give you a full health replenishment, so it may be worth it. But you may get a checkpoint coming up soon anyway. I don't know if you really need it. But it's easy enough to get. This stage is probably one of the longer ones. It's pretty lengthy, but it's pretty damn easy. Yeah, so this is a super easy boss. This is one of the easiest bosses. So same kind of thing with this guy. Just be super aggressive. Don't even worry about taking some of the hits. And just keep chopping at him. If you can easily dodge something, then dodge it. But you'll see I pretty much do the same thing again when I die on him. I just play really aggressive. I don't know if I had full health that time, but I definitely do now. So I think now it's really easy. And also I got an idea of what he was going to do. But yeah, he'll stand there and just shoot at you, which barely damages you, and you can just keep swiping at him. So, just take the hits and just beat the shit out of him. You can see, for some reason, I didn't even take damage to my health bar. Now I did. But for some reason, it wasn't even showing any damage. I don't know what was going on there. Because it looked like I was taking the hits, but very fucking easy. So this is one of the trickier stages, I believe, if I remember right. You want to take out those little droid things when they're in your way. Some of them you can ignore. You may want to get this health. I'm not sure where the next checkpoint is, so it's usually good to try to grab them when you can. I believe this part has a pretty challenging, in this stage, a pretty challenging part with some crushers. That's pretty tricky, and definitely took me quite a few attempts. It was one of the harder parts of the game. This is kind of like Sonic 2, the chemical plant zone with these pipes. Nothing too challenging as of yet in the stage. You got to be careful here with these guys trying to knock you off the platform. It's going to always be a little irritating. Of course, since this mimics the Game Boy style, everything is zoomed in. And when you're, airborne, a lot of times you can't see platforms and shit below you. Plus, there's these fucking shitty clouds on the bottom of the screen that kind of obscure your view. So, it sometimes you got to go off memory of where the platform last was and try to anticipate it that way, since you can't always see what's going on. But you'll see the platform at some point, and then you can kind of mentally estimate where it's going to end up. There's a little bit of that. See that shitty hit detection, landing detection, if you want to call it, where I went right through the platform? That's kind of where the game, it doesn't feel great to play. But, I mean, like I said, it feels okay. It's passable. But you're probably going to get fucked over a few times from, strange issues with that. See, I went right through the platform that time. You can see it clearly. And then, of course, there's walls that blend into the background. So you get pushed off the platform because it looks like part of the background. So that's part of the bad thing about this type of graphic style they're trying to mimic. They don't do a good job of showing what's in the background. But obviously you do learn it. But it's not immediately obvious. At least it wasn't for me. So now this is the most difficult section of this stage and one of the hardest parts of the game. So this may take some tries. But now you'll see it. Hopefully this will be a successful attempt. So this is all memorization, knowing when to double jump, when to suspend yourself in the air and do that double jump to time it just right and get through. This is all like memorization shit. So you really got to get used to like where the crusher is going to be located on the screen, its position, before you make certain moves. That's all memorization. So there's not really any great tips except to just keep playing until you memorize how to move through. There's a rhythm to it, and you just have to find that. And when you do it, it may end up looking different than my run. You may have a different play style, so you may be able to do it in a different way. But there's going to be a rhythm to it. You are required to move fast through these points. There's not a lot of waiting around that you can really do. So you just got to get used to it. For this part, I just like to spam the slide button. I usually make it through all those things by spamming the slide. There's a slide button as well as you can slide by using the diagonals and the jump button. So whichever is more comfortable for you. Sometimes it's easier to spam the slide button as the inputs aren't always reliable to keep doing it rapidly with the diagonals. But that's up to you, what you're more comfortable with. So this is one of the harder bosses, because he doesn't have a lot of openings where you can hit him, and he does attack frequently. But you'll see this is the failed attempt, but you'll see how to do it right after this. This is my first time getting there. So I'll explain it better when I'm actually fighting him correctly. But he was tricky. He took a few attempts. You just have to learn how to dodge most of his attacks. Since the fight does go on for a while, you don't want to just take damage recklessly, or otherwise your damage will add up after a while. It takes a little while to take him down, so you do actually want to play well in this fight. You can usually hit him twice when he appears, if you're fast enough. You may only want to go for one hit to play it safe. I think I was playing it safer. Once he's down like this, you can go into the quick time event by engaging him. If you pull that off correctly, you can do massive damage. If you don't, I think you take damage by fucking those up, so you do want to learn how to do that. So I would say just hit them once and then move to the other side for these attacks. Stay in the gaps of the fireballs. For the clones, one of them I think is the correct one to hit. But just hit them all until something happens. I usually just jump up and hit them once and then I move to the opposite side. Is mostly what I'm doing. And if you do that, it's really not too hard after a few attempts. Just got to get used to it. You see, I played it pretty sloppy and it was good enough. You will fight most of the bosses again near the end of the game as a little boss rush, but it's easy because you get checkpoints for each boss that you beat. So you don't have to worry about beating multiple in a row on one health bar. Not too bad, though, once you get it down. Pretty easy. But it's one of the harder bosses, but it's just a matter of practicing it a little bit. If I remember right, this was the easiest stage in the game. If it's the stage I'm thinking about, and it has the easiest boss in the game. But it has been a few weeks, so I could be wrong. This was a fairly, relatively quick kill, so it didn't really stick in my memory too strong. Not too many repeated scenes. I got this game for $2 or $3, which for someone like me who just likes to go through and kill off games and shit, I thought it was kind of a fun playthrough, and I did enjoy it for a few bucks. But I will say that paying $10 for this would definitely be pushing it. So I would say if you could get it for under $5, especially $2 or $3, I think it's worth picking up if you're into these kind of trial and error games. It's not on the level of difficulty of some of the harder NES games, or even a lot of the moderate NES games. It's really not hugely challenging if you're accustomed to these type of games. If not, then of course a lot of these games can be very, very hard. But if you play through a lot of these types of games, you'll probably finish it within a few hours. I would say maybe under 5 hours. It took me around 3, I believe, but. So for this stage, you're mostly just busting through with very little resistance. Very easy fucking boss. I think I beat this boss the first time I got to it. You want to just ride this. This was the first time I got to the boss, I believe. And, very easy to see what was going on here. Try to be in the safe spots on the missiles to avoid any damage, but most of this stuff is pretty easy to dodge. Even though I fucked it up. The fist is kind of fast. That's a little hard to see coming. But I was still getting used to the little pattern here. So you're basically only going to be hitting the boss once each time, I think. I don't know if you can do any more damage than that. So just go for one. And then just go back to the ground. Go back to the left side. I don't think it takes that many hits. It's not like the other bosses that take a lot of hits. It's kind of like, I guess it's a mini-boss since it has no health bar. The stage may actually have some harder parts. But I remember this section, I was able to get 2 hits in. So I guess you can get 2 hits if you time it right. Something to keep in mind. You can probably do 2 hits each time and do that a little faster. But that was my first time getting there. It was a little close. Yeah, actually this level's challenging. But that section is very fucking easy. It's one of the easier sections of the game, I would say. But yeah, this section has some challenging platforming. For sure. It has one of the harder sections as well, as that Crusher scene was. This is one of the harder scenes coming up. You'll see it because it's a lot of platforming, but I don't know if it's probably not this part right here, but it is coming pretty soon. This first part's pretty easy to bust through. You don't have to be perfect on this part. You can play pretty sloppy and get through. But this next checkpoint, I think this is where it gets challenging. I may die here. I think this may be the area. Though I'm not sure. Let's see where I end up. No, it wasn't that. No, I think it's this part. This is the challenging part. The other part, I didn't find that other part to be too challenging, but this part I died quite a few times on this checkpoint. You see, you get a checkpoint right here, so this part's tricky. The main idea, of course, is to try to keep moving. Don't worry too much about trying to slash the turrets and destroy them. Try to just keep it going. Keep moving. If you fall down, you're going to have to climb back up a little bit if you don't fall into the spikes. I don't know if the spikes one-hit kill you, but they will damage you either way. I guess not, but they do damage you, so you don't want to spend too much time in the spikes. But this part can be a little tricky. Because the control is pretty floaty. It's not always easy to make snappy movements in the air and land where you want. So the main issue is that the guys will shoot you, and then, of course, on a narrow platform, it's very easy to get knocked off. So you do have to be pretty precise. Once you make it over that area, though, now you can kind of haul ass through. Just try to keep moving. I'm not sure where the checkpoint is exactly. It may not even be up yet, but just try to keep moving. Try to double jump to save yourself. And then I think you do have to complete this part, too, to get to the next checkpoint. So it's quite a long little checkpoint. And it can be pretty challenging. It's one of the harder parts of the game. But it's just practice, just learning it and, try to keep that momentum going and just move fast. Initially, I was trying to take out some of the turrets, and it just made it harder. It was easier to just, take the occasional hit and just try to keep moving. So this part is very easy. You have to disable these little lasers that open these gates. And you get a checkpoint right here, so it's not a big deal if you die. But yeah, pretty much you're just going to move all the way to the right. If you want, wait for these lasers to pass, or just take the damage either way. And then you get a little laser gate. You can't destroy those other ones that are shooting out the lasers currently. So the ones with the square around them are indestructible. So now you're just going to climb up here. And really, you can take a lot of hits from these lasers, so it doesn't really matter if you take some damage. I mean, just don't stand there and take repeated hits in a row. But you see, I played very sloppy. I didn't even bother to try to do well. And now you're at the next checkpoint. Once you disable a gate, they always give you a checkpoint. Whenever there's these gates and stages, they'll always give you a checkpoint when you disable one. So now if you die, it really doesn't matter. You'll start with one of the gates already cleared. This one is even easier than the last one. I think I may have gotten it on my first try, but I don't remember. I remember it being a very short one, though. I guess not quite, but that was near the end of that gate. So with full health, you should have no problem with this part. After this, I believe the boss is pretty close by. Though the stages do kind of blur together a little bit. But after disabling both of those, now you can drop through the main middle area. So go through this wall. So now you have another little quick time event. You do fight these guys quite a bit throughout the game. So eventually you'll get used to it. It does at least save the damage you did with the quick time event, so if you have to repeat it a few times, the hits will accumulate eventually. So now's the boss. Now for this guy, my trick was to kill him before he could initiate the quick time event. So what I did was I was very aggressive. I try to even jump and counter him in the air with strikes. And I'm just trying to keep the heat on him at all times. Like I'm trying to hit him as much as I can. Which includes knocking him out of the air when he jumps up. By getting that little knockback. See, I failed it here. But you'll see how I play it to really take this guy out fast. This is what I found easiest to do, was just take him out as quick as possible. So now you're going to really see me countering him really quickly by trying to follow his movements and take him out of the air and really keep up with him. And if you do it fast enough, then he won't be able to do the quick time event. So you can, keep it to where he's not able to even initiate it. So that's what I did here. I was getting sick of failing the quick time event. It seems like it's super fast on this guy. And it was really irritating for some reason. It was giving me more trouble than usual. Maybe I was just more fired up and I was playing shitty, but it was just easier for me to be real aggressive and take him out fast. So this stage can be kind of tricky. There's a few tricky platforming segments, though I don't think there's anything as hard as the forest section and the crusher stage. I thought were some of the harder areas. But I remember there was a few parts in here that might be a little tricky. There may be a boss rush in this stage. There isn't a stage that looks similar to this. But it's very easy. You just fight the bosses again. It's basically repeating the same shit you already did. And you get checkpoints after each boss fight. So, very easy. You will already know how to beat all the bosses by this point. You don't have to be super careful here with damage because you can take a lot of hits and you can kind of just bust through. And as long as you keep moving forward, you're going to probably get the checkpoints before you get killed from taking too much damage. There's not really many pits or anything, if anything, in this area. So I would say try to just keep moving. The lasers are initiated by falling within a proximity of them, so you don't have to wait around for them, really. You just have to move fast. But see, I got a checkpoint right here, so that's really not bad. As you can see, the lasers only trigger when you're within a certain range of them, so you don't have to wait around or anything. You can get some health back here. Just drop down there, and this might be a little bonus area here, a little health. So you can't destroy these lasers because they have those squares around them, so those ones are always indestructible. So you just have to try your best to time it. Once the laser fires out, don't try to jump back like that. You're pretty much fucked if you didn't move fast enough. So you really just want to, make sure you move far enough. But like I said, you can tank a lot of the damage and get to the next checkpoint a lot of times. I was able to skip that guy somehow. That would have been useful if I was able to do that on some other parts. It seems a little tricky to skip them, but it seems like there is a way to do it. I tried jumping over them before, I think, and I don't remember having success with that, but maybe if you do it at a certain point, it'll let you bypass them. Might be worth experimenting with. You're just going to get on these platforms and ride them for the most part. That one you do have to jump over the wall and get back on it. So that's probably the trickiest part of the stage. And it's really not that hard. But it does require a little bit of timing. And it doesn't start you that far back anyway, so you'll have plenty of time to try it. So yeah, you just want to kind of double jump over it instead of standing on it. It's easier to just kind of double jump with the movement of the platform and then land back on it. I found to be easier. Now this is a boss rush where you have to fight not all of them. You fight a good number of them, maybe 4 bosses over again. But it's very fucking easy because you've already fought all these bosses, so eventually you will beat them all. You just have to do exactly what you already did. They're no different than they were before that I can tell. So for the robot, again, just be super aggressive and just follow his movements. You don't have to worry about conserving any health at all because you get checkpoint after you defeat each one. Because when you defeat a robot, when you defeat a boss, it removes the gate. So anytime in this game when you remove a gate, you get a checkpoint. So, very easy. So if you fail it, you'll just go back to it again. You can pretty much do them in any order you want. Doesn't matter. Once you destroy all 4 bosses, the gates will all clear, and then you can go down the main gate. But you see, by standing close and slashing, it looks like I take no damage, which is odd. Because it looks like I'm getting hit, but it just seems to work well. And I think I got hit by 1 missile, but I was able to swipe most of them. You can also stand in between where those things are going to land and not take damage, I guess. But you don't really have to play it that safe. Easy enough to slash your way through this guy. If you do get initiated into that little quick time event, you can try to do that, but I fucked it up and it was still easy. So now you're just going to have 3 more bosses. These things don't give you that much health, so you may die your first time getting to a boss if you don't have full health, but with the checkpoint, you'll just get right back into it with full health. So I may fail this the first time. But it's the same fucking fight, so nothing new. I never got too good at any of these bosses because none of them really took that long to break through. So I never really got enough practice to be good at them. But they do have mostly very simple patterns that wouldn't be that hard to do with no damage if you practiced a little and just learned all their patterns if you really wanted to. For most of the game, I like just kind of busting through and being aggressive and just trying to tear through the game. Unless the game gives me a reason to play well, I'm not really going to refine it. So you get some nice damage whenever you get into those little events, obviously. But this is really just the same shit you already dealt with. I mean, this was kind of like unnecessary padding on the game, really. Since it's the same exact shit you just did, and there's no incentive to try to do it any better than you originally did it, because you get a checkpoint after each one, so it doesn't add any challenge or anything. It just recycles the exact same content. Same thing here, just maybe get in a hit or two, but don't get greedy, and then just retreat. I mean, that's one of the main guys where you actually, you have to actually learn the patterns of the boss. That's one of the rare incidences where you really have to actually kind of know what's going on, but it's simple patterns, but you actually have to do something aside from being super aggressive. So I guess it's, one of the boss fights you actually have to know how to play somewhat. The final boss is like that too. I think the final boss is one of the trickier parts as well. But even the final boss is not that difficult. It's just some simple patterns. So whenever you go in this little scene, you're going to get a lot of damage if you do it right. By this point, I'm pretty familiar with those, so I was pulling them off pretty consistently, I think, by this point in the game. For those lightning things, you just jump over they're tall, but if you double jump, you can go over them. I don't know if I explained that the first time, but it's all very simple. And you can take quite a few hits. So either way. So I think there's one more boss left before you break through the main gate for this stage. This actually seems like it should be a final stage with, the boss rush and the way it looks at the lasers and shit. It looks like a final area. But it's kind of just like it's pretty close to the end, though. There's not much left after this, maybe another 10 minutes or so. So I'm pretty sure we already fought this asshole. I guess another boss from the game. Or maybe this was the last one. I guess I didn't kill the fourth one yet. That's right. But, yeah, this guy, it's easier just to play it safe, like I said, and just wait for him to get the fire to surround him, and then when he goes down to the ground, just do the little routine of jumping over him twice and going in the opposite direction, and jump the fireball, and then just engage him in the quick time event. And don't try to get in extra hits like I'm doing here. Just wait for him to do his little quick time event thing, and you'll beat him eventually because he's going to do the same patterns again and again. So if you are having trouble, just wait for that opening. Because it's like free damage, pretty much, once you get used to doing the quick-time events. You do have to get used to them, but by this point, you've done enough of them. But it did take me some time to adjust to the speed of them. They are pretty fast. They don't give you much time to react. But yeah, your jumps are so floaty that I would find myself getting hit a lot on him when I tried to hit him in the air when he was moving. And the hitbox seems huge, so even if he was in the opposite direction, I seem to always run into him somehow. So I just said, fuck it, I will just be more patient and wait for the easy opening. So it should be one more little quick time event, and then he should be dead. But yeah, same exact fight. I don't remember if this stage had a main boss after all this, but we'll see. I thought there was a main area after all this shit. Yeah, see, that's like the main gate. I think there's a new boss down here. Might be the Blob, if I remember right. Which is actually a really easy boss. Okay, so yeah, there's some more platforming and shit, yeah. More lasers. So I guess we're not back at the boss yet, but there's nothing too challenging from what I remember in the rest of the stage, and the boss is easy. So you're not going to have any problems if you already got this far. You should be good actually to beat the rest of the game by this point. The game doesn't get ultra challenging or anything near the end. You know, there's a few challenging parts, but the hardest shit is definitely behind at this point. So you did have to do some better platforming there than the other parts. So a little trickier with the timing. But it's the same type of thing as trying to jump with the movement of the platform and go over the little wall. For this part, I kind of just busted through. I didn't even try to dodge anything. But then now for this guy, you know, you got to do the little quick time event. I was trying to skip him. I was getting a little greedy. I do like skipping shit, but for some reason he wasn't engaging it, the quick time. But now once you get in, it's very easy. So just make your way up here. And the boss shouldn't be that much farther off at this point. The boss is super easy if you play aggressively. And I'm going to show that. You're probably going to see me die the first time. But then you'll see how to do it proper. If you're aggressive enough, it's super fucking easy. But it also kind of depends on a little random luck with the forms that he does. Depending on that, you may kill him slower or faster. But eventually, if you play it enough times, you'll break through. I just get right up on his ass and try to hit that ball when it's exposed. And you see you can take like half his health down in one little reveal. So if you're aggressive enough, you can just tank the hits and just beat the shit out of him with your slashes. So you don't even have to worry about dodging too much if you do it right. So you'll see that here. I mean, you can jump the punches if you want. Because you do have to wait for him to reveal himself. Then he's going to do this little bullshit where he fires a bunch of shit. It's easy to dodge. Now just take the hits and just keep slashing at him. I didn't get great damage there, but eventually you will. It kind of depends on what opening he reveals. Like, I think this one's really good. When he does that, you get a ton of hits in. So look how much damage I got on that one form he did. So, like, that's probably the one that you want. Where he does that little wave, and it's, you know, I really didn't have to get hit by it. But let him finish this shit, and now just beat the shit out of him, finish him off. It was definitely close. It was a sloppy run, but you see it doesn't require much skill. You can just be aggressive. It's not a hard boss. So now we're approaching the end of the game. I think this may be the final stage. It's mainly going to be fighting some bosses from what I remember, but they're new bosses. They're not recycled. Now this first one, I remember this first one being really easy. I think I beat it on the first or second try, so I don't have much strats for that. But you'll be able to see what I did. I don't even remember what the fuck I did. I think I was just really aggressive. Now if you collected enough of these bullshit little discs, I think you may get a better ending. Maybe you get an extra boss fight or something. I have no idea. I didn't care enough to do any of that shit. I don't like collecting shit anyway. So yeah, just I don't know, follow his ass and slash the shit out of him. I wouldn't really worry about trying to play it well. Not if you're just trying to beat the game. I mean, you see, there's not much that I did here. I just tried to keep up with him. If you go into the little quick time event, try to take advantage of it. But you see, I fucked it up, and I think I still beat it. You may want to dodge a few attacks. There he did a bunch of shurikens there at the end, but I guess that kind of fucked me up a little bit. But I should get it on this. That might have been my first or second try. I don't remember. I remember beating this maybe on the second try. The final boss can be tricky after this guy, though, because he has, I believe he has 2 forms. So you do have to have it down pretty well. So that's probably the trickiest of the boss fights. But it's just a little bit of practice. You see, I'm being super aggressive here and super sloppy, not even giving a shit. Just taking the hits, pretty much. And if you pull off these quick time events, you have a much better chance of beating him because you get that extra damage in. If you're playing sloppy like this, it does help to get those, because if I didn't get that little extra damage that I got from that quick time event, I probably would have fucked up again. Because I was playing very sloppy. But you can see it's an easy fight. So it shouldn't take you too long. I don't think there's any real stage here. I think it's pretty much all boss fights. So I think the final boss is coming up. Maybe there's this little asshole here. I don't remember much of a stage here. But I could be wrong. I think there was one enemy in the entire stage, not much. So this is the final boss. So you'll see my failed attempt, and then you'll see me get the patterns down. It's really not too hard, though. You just have to get it down. I think this was my first time trying it, so I didn't really know what to expect. But I don't remember it taking me super long, though it did take some time. I died a decent amount of times before I got it down. It's probably the hardest part of the game, so it may take a few tries. You do get a checkpoint right before the final boss, though, so you don't have to start back or anything. So you want to try to kind of run so that the scythe kind of goes to your last position, but not right on you. As long as you keep moving underneath him, the scythe will probably miss you. And then you want to try to jump and get in a hit. Sometimes you can get 2 hits in, but you don't need to play greedy. You can play it very carefully. Just slide when he does his little charging move where he charges across the screen. He telegraphs it, so you'll see when he's about to do it. It's very obvious. See, he moves down, and when he moves down, he's about to do it. He puts the scythe in a bottom position, so you'll know when he's going to do it. It's very easy. And it's just simple patterns. It's just a little bit tedious because you can only hit them maybe once at a time. If you're aggressive, maybe twice. And the hitbox is kind of shitty where it's very easy to hit into him when you're jumping up, so you have to be extra careful. Your sword doesn't have a huge reach either, so it's a little tricky, but once you get it down, it's very easy. It just takes a little long. The best time to hit him is when he's going in the opposite direction of where you're standing. You can hit him in the back as he's moving away from you. I don't recommend trying to hit him while he's moving towards you because of the floaty jump controls and the large hitbox. This makes it very hard to do that without taking a hit yourself. So I'd say see, the sword went right through him. It's pretty anal. But eventually you will damage him enough. Now he's going to do his hardest form. You want to kind of stay away from the hand that's about to attack. But you just got to kind of get used to how the hands attack and go on the opposite side of them. I didn't even have this down, and I was able to beat it. Because I didn't get a lot of practice on this form, because I didn't get to it too often at that point. But as long as you kind of try to avoid the attacks and pay attention to the patterns, And if you die enough times, you should learn those patterns. I didn't die enough on that second form to get it down. I just kind of barely scraped by, but that is the trickiest section. Stay tuned for a review coming on the game soon. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.